So welcome everybody, Stacey Murphy here, and this is 3 strategies to simplify preserving and storing the harvest so you can stock your shelves and boost your immunity. And it takes less time than you think. So what I'm going to show you how to do today is to demystify food preservation so you can enjoy fresh homemade food all season long, no matter what's going on in the world. And we're talking about foods that really boost your immunity. These are crazy times that we live in. And so now more than ever, your health is primary importance. And cooking all your own healthy meals, it gets tiring. But what if you could spend the same amount of time and batch your meals for months to come? And you wouldn't have to go to the grocery store as often, which is kind of a hassle these days. So I'm sure you guys are ready to get started, right? So for some of you, this may be the first time you're thinking about preserving the harvest. That's awesome. You're seeing the health benefits of fresh food and you'd love to enjoy it year round. But because you don't have firsthand experience, you may feel a little bit intimidated, not knowing where to get started, and that's okay. And you may be wondering how to know if the food that you preserve for later is safe to eat. That can be scary. I totally get that. And I'm really glad you're here because I want to put those fears to rest. People have been doing this for hundreds of years, and you can master food preservation pretty quickly too. There are some safety precautions that have been tested and approved that take the guesswork out of the process. But I'm guessing for a lot of you, this is not your first attempt to try to figure this stuff out. So the first thing I want to mention that is if you've tried to preserve your harvest and you just feel lost in all the work, buried in tons of zucchini and tomatoes, and you're not really enjoying the process, you're definitely not alone. Because if you're gardening, cooking, preserving, harvesting, it's a lot and it can be overwhelming. I totally get it. And now that I've mentioned gardening, I should also mention that you don't need a garden to preserve the harvest. Take advantage of all that fresh food at the farmer's market. That's always an option too. All right. And here's a slide from one of our students, from Gina, and she was saying that we changed her mind on food preservation. She initially took this course to learn more about how to preserve harvest, but what happened is she started realizing that there was food that she was buying from Costco that was going to waste, and she was finding new ways to take advantage of that food as well. So not only from your garden and from the farmer's market, but also can be from the grocery store if you know which foods to preserve and when to preserve them and when to let them go. Okay, so that's why we're here today. If you're like me, you have a dream to grow, harvest, and eat organic vegetables and herbs, preferably all year round, no matter what's going on in the world, so you can feel great in your body. And so I'm going to show you 3 strategies to simplify this process during this live class. And I'm going to give you all that I got for the next 60 minutes, and then I'm going to share an opportunity to learn more with me at the end. All right, so I want you to really focus here, take it all in, and at the end, I'll share an opportunity to dive deeper. Okay, so my goal for this live class is to help 2 types of people. For those who are beginners, you're going to gain an understanding of the different food preservation strategies that might work for you, even if you're learning how to cook. This might be, in these times today, some people are just learning how to cook for the first time because they're at home all the time. That's cool. And for more experienced growers, you're going to discover a new approach to automating your process from harvest into meals. So putting fresh meals on the table takes less time than you think. And my intention for this class, the only way for you to stress less about what's for dinner, anybody else stress about what's for dinner every night? So the only way for you to stress less after a busy day is to have a pantry stocked with fresh, healthy options and a fast, creative way to put those things together into delicious meals. And the only way for you to have a pantry stocked with fresh, healthy options is to follow a step-by-step food preservation system so you can manage your time effectively. It's not something you just know how to do because you've eaten before. Meal planning by itself is a life skill to have, and linking that meal planning to fresh harvest is an art form and one I can show you how to master. This is the cooking and life skills class that you wish they taught in schools so that everyday life could be simpler. And I've trained thousands of gardeners on 6 different continents how to get the most out of their gardens with the least amount of effort. And I hope that there are teens here who are learning how to cook so that you can surprise and delight your family with fresh food meals and preserving the harvest for the winter months. I hope there are teens here present that this is their project. This is one of their projects that they're excited about. And so what I hope to do is to help you with a systematic approach to getting that food onto your table so you can enjoy all that homegrown health. All right. And like I said, I've done this with people of all ages. Now, I had a big breakthrough years ago that showed me how to do all of this, and I'm excited to share that with you today. So everyone's reason for why they start preserving the harvest is different. My reason was a bit unusual, but not completely uncommon. So I'm Italian, and my grandma had an Italian restaurant decades ago in Detroit, and her pasta recipe sauce was her pasta sauce, it was passed down to my dad, and he passed it down to me. And when I moved to Brooklyn, I was experimenting with variations on her recipe, and I discovered a new twist that was really delicious. And my friends told me that I had to start canning this recipe and selling it because it was that good. And I told my family about it. They didn't believe me. They said, your recipe could never be as good as grandma's, because in our family, my grandma's recipe was the gold standard. So I did what every competitive person does. We decided to have a pasta sauce cook-off. So when I visited the holidays, we were going to have this pasta sauce cook-off, and everybody was so excited. They were going to cook grandma's, and I was going to bring my own. But then I started thinking the secret to my sauce was a couple key ingredients from the farmer's market. And these were specific varieties of vegetables that I wouldn't be able to find in the dead of winter in Detroit. So I decided to can a bunch of my secret sauce and surprise my family with it already done, ready to eat. So I shipped home a huge box and told them not to open it until I arrived. And then it was time for the pasta sauce showdown. And my sauce was a huge success, so much so that my parents wanted me to show them how I made it. They didn't understand where all the flavor was coming from. So we went to the grocery store, and we bought all the ingredients, and we cooked a big batch together. But guess what? It wasn't the same. I mean, it was okay, but the key flavors that made it unique, they were missing. The tomatoes that we found in the grocery store were just not the same. And my family was a little let down that they wouldn't be able to replicate this recipe so easily because they were kind of hooked on it at this point. And that's when they made me promise to make more the next year, a lot more, and the year after that too. And I heard one year that they found a jar in the back of the cupboard that they didn't even know was there. It was only enough for a couple servings, and they all fought over who was going to get to eat it. To this day, they still talk about the fight over that last jar of pasta sauce. That's the power of fresh tomatoes from your garden or from the farmer's market. It's different than what you get at the grocery store. It's better than what you find at the grocery store. And in this experience, I had this profound shift. I realized how special these flavors are that are coming out of our gardens and out of the farmer's market, and how the convenience store has robbed us of those experiences. They've robbed us from our cultural heritage. They've robbed us from our connection to our family's recipes passed down from generation to generation. They've robbed us of the special flavors that only happen once a year. So in this moment, I started thinking, looking around, saying, what else can I do? And so I started canning fruit because I had a memory of being a child and having fruit cups. So I started canning fruit, enjoying fresh peaches without any sugar. In the dead of winter, I could enjoy fresh peaches. And it reminded me of those fruit cups that my mom used to put in my lunches, but a little bit better because I made them without any sugar, without any cane sugar. And I added a little hint of mint, which was like a special little touch. It was simply divine, homemade and fresh all winter long. And how fun is it that you get to create a little bit of your own recipe and stock what you love? You won't find this in the grocery store. And so I mentioned you don't have to add cane sugar to make fruit cups. You don't have to use cane sugar to make your own fruit jams. There are approved safe recipes using just fruit and real fruit juice. It will still be sweet and those natural sugars from the natural sugars of the fruit, but there are no added sugars that are needed. So you're probably wondering at this point, what does this have to do with you? You don't necessarily have a family pasta sauce. You probably don't have a hankering for fruit cups from your childhood, but here's how it does relate to you, your garden and your meals. So here are students just like you who got started preserving the harvest with classes like this one today. So this is Becky, and she was saying, I wanted to have a plan to plant, harvest, preserve, and especially plan meals in a way that was organized. After she spent countless hours surfing YouTube, trying to figure it all out, she was feeling at a complete loss. And thank goodness that this course helped her figure it all out. And it now makes sense to her, and she's got confidence to move on. And this is Sandy saying, my plant-based recipes, my use of herbs and systematic methods to develop these habits have especially helped her get on track. She's got more produce coming into the kitchen, and she's eating most of it. So we're going to cover a lot of ground today. And I know you all come in with different reasons for being here. And so go ahead and post those in the chat box. I would love to hear from you. So we're going to cover a lot of ground today. So before we get started, I want you to be looking out for those couple of golden nuggets that you can put into practice right away. You don't have to do all of this at once. So here's what we're going to cover for the next 45 minutes or so. So secret number 1, how to save 40% on your grocery bill each year. How cool is that? Secret number 2, in just 6 weeks, your pantry could be stocked year-round with fresh, healthy meal options. Just 6 weeks. Secret number 3, having a harvest preservation system not only helps you save time and energy preparing food year-round, but it allows you to be creative, putting together unusual ingredients for delicious and unexpected meals in minutes. And I'm going to show you the secret to my Harvest into Meals system. Okay, so secret number 1, how to save 40% on your grocery bill each year. All right, so back to the day before I had a garden, I would go to the farmer's market on Saturday mornings. I would grab all my groceries for the week. I would buy all of this amazing, gorgeous produce, and I would cook all week long with this gorgeous, fresh food. And then Saturday morning would come around, and I would have this dilemma. There would still be fresh food in my fridge from last week. And once I started gardening, I would oftentimes have the same problem too. There'd be more fresh food on my plants ready for harvest, but I still had fresh food in my fridge. And sometimes it was just a little bit of food, but sometimes it was a lot of food. And sometimes I would forget about something and it would wilt or go bad. And you know what? This is so typical. How many times have you opened up your refrigerator only to find that something has gone bad, or your refrigerator, there's something at the bottom of your drawer, and maybe it's something you grew in your garden that you spent time and energy cultivating, and now it's wilting. It is the worst feeling in the world. It makes you feel like all that time and energy was totally wasted. It's so easy for food to get lost in the process and not reach your plate. On average, you're not alone. On average, Americans throw away 40% of their food every year. And I don't know how much of that is produce, but that's a lot of food, right? It's a lot of groceries going to waste. And we all see this happen to a certain amount in our home. It's totally normal. So I noticed this problem of always something at the bottom of my fridge that I would forget about because there was so much awesome food at the market I wanted to buy every week. And I thought to myself, what if I simply buy 40% less at the market? It seemed like a reasonable idea, right? But the strangest thing happened. Somehow I had the exact same problem the next week. Smaller percentage of food left over, but still there was food left over in the bottom of my fridge again. So what's going on here? And I realized I had been programmed by my mom to always have a stocked fridge just in case anything happened. And with today's crazy times, this is true today more than ever, right? We're basically realizing that we can't rely necessarily on the grocery store. We don't want to go to the grocery store. And so we want to be stocked and ready to cook. We are wired to never have an empty fridge because an empty fridge is scary. And it makes sense psychologically. We want to know that there is food when we need it, right? It's our basic security. It's how we feel safe in this world. And here's the other thing. We're also wired to go for the best looking produce when we cook. So things that are a little bit going bad keep getting left behind until they wilt and die. So I decided to do something drastic. I vowed to completely empty my fridge every week, no matter what. Literally pull everything that's perishable out, put it on the table so I could decide what to do with it. And I realized that if I simply preserved those things that were left behind, it's not like I had an empty fridge at all, because I was just moving it from the fridge where it's liable to go bad to a storage method where it's going to last longer, where I can preserve it and store it. I can pull it out whenever I need to. So I started preserving just a little bit of food each week, not just to alleviate the guilt of throwing the food away, but to save 40% on my grocery bill. I mean, the guilt is one thing, but saving money on the grocery bill, that's cool too, right? So one of the reasons that people never get started preserving the harvest is that they think they need large batches to make it worthwhile. Do you have that image in your head of somebody standing over a stove making giant batches? It's just not true. You don't have to be drowning in produce to start preserving the harvest. So I get it. A lot of people think it's not worthwhile to save a couple of ingredients here or there. Is it really worthwhile to save these wilted greens? Or people think they need every ingredient in the recipe to grow in at the exact same time in their garden in order to make that recipe. And it's simply not true. It just makes it harder to feel that way. And I think this happens because when people think about preserving the harvest, they first think about canning, like I did with my pasta sauce. It makes the most sense in these large batches. And, you know, if you're going to take all that time to set up the pot and the canning and heat up your kitchen, big batches, they do make a lot of sense. And that's when canning does make a lot of sense. That's where I started with pasta sauce and with fruit cups, right? But here's the thing. There are 5 more types of simple food preservation that don't require large batches. And frankly, when you're canning, you want the freshest ingredients. So that's not the best method for the things that are left over and older at the bottom of your fridge. So canning isn't a good option for those things that are left over. It's not going to save you that 40% on your groceries. Now, before I go on, I should also mention about canning. There's one thing that's very important about canning and preserving your food for later. This is where safety matters the most. Safety first. Of all the food preservation strategies, canning is the one where you want to pay extra attention to food safety requirements. You want to follow recipes for your safety. There are some safe substitutions that you can make in recipes, but you want to check in with skilled folks before you do that. And this class is too short to go into all the details of canning, but do not simply wing canning. Follow trusted recipes first, all right? And follow a mentor who can help you with safe recipe substitutions. All right, so back to the food that's left over in the bottom of your fridge, because we want to save that 40% of your grocery bill. I have a couple tricks up my sleeve for the things that typically get left over at the bottom of the fridge. So one of the first things I did was start dehydrating any greens that started to wilt so that I could enjoy fresh greens in the new week. And then I could accumulate powdered greens that I would take with me wherever I went on vacation, on a road trip these days, whenever I needed fresh food on the go, whenever I went out for the day, a picnic, and I wanted some fresh greens at the picnic. So I have a dehydrator and it's easily accessible. I can just pop those greens in anytime, set the timer, and walk away. And when they're done, I simply take them out and then I grind them into a powder that I can take with me on the go. So imagine all of those B vitamins when you're on the road, you can't find a restaurant with healthy options. And this is how you can get a lot of healthy food to take with you wherever you go. And if you have a bit more time, you can also make chips with those greens. These are my vegan nacho style kale chips, which are a crowd pleaser for all ages. They disappear fast. No more wasted greens. These will disappear fast. And there are also vegetables, and I'll say this about the green chips. They take a little bit of extra time because you got to mix up a batch, but totally worth it for those things that are going bad at the bottom of the fridge. And then the other thing for things that are going bad at the bottom of your fridge, there are a couple vegetables that you can simply chop and freeze. All right, so 2 vegetables that you can simply chop and freeze. One you might not have in your fridge. You might actually have outside your fridge, but they can go bad. Onions and green peppers. So green peppers in your fridge, if they're starting to look a little bad, chop them up and freeze them. And these are 2 vegetables that simply chop and freeze. You don't have to do anything in the meantime. Another shortcut is, let's say you have tomatoes coming in from the garden and you know you're going to do a big canning project at some point, but you don't want to do one yet. What you can do is you can freeze your tomatoes whole and then wait for more tomatoes to come in to can all of them at once. So those are a couple of things that you can just freeze. And the reason why you can just freeze your tomatoes is that they're mostly water. And so, and also you're going to make them into a sauce and they're going to be mushy. So texture doesn't matter. So the reason why you can't necessarily freeze all of your vegetables, can't just like throw them in the freezer and freeze them. There is a process that vegetables go through. So when you harvest your vegetables, the thing that you need to know about all your vegetables is that when you cut them off the plant, they're still alive, even after you harvest them. And so you can't just simply put them in the freezer, because when they're still alive, there's enzymes that are active in that food. And if you simply put it in the freezer, that leads to a deterioration of the food, and it's going to break down the flavor and the texture. This isn't true of your tomatoes, of your peppers, and of your onions, but it is true of all your other vegetables. All right. So that's why you don't want to simply freeze everything. But what you can do is you can quickly blanch them and then freeze them. Blanching is simply a process where you stick them in a hot water bath for a short amount of time, and every vegetable has a different blanching time. And then that takes out that enzymatic reaction, and then you pop it in the freezer and you're all good. All right. We don't have enough time to go into all the details here, so I'm just kind of giving you a smattering of all of the good stuff. And quick pickling is one of my favorite ways to take advantage of that 40% that gets left over in the bottom of your fridge, especially if you end up with a lot of zucchini. Zucchini make really good pickles. They stay really crunchy and they're really delicious. So quick pickling is another awesome way to transform whatever's left at the bottom of your fridge into something delicious. You can make quick pickles in any size container. All you need are your veggies, some herbs, and some fun spices. And so basically you're just mixing a quick brine up on a stove. You heat up 1 part vinegar, 1 part water, and then you pour them into jars over all of your different ingredients. And I in the chat box, I wonder, Lauren, if you can find the link to the book, The Fast Food 3 Quick and Easy Zucchini Recipes. We've got the quick pickling recipes in that book. And you know, this is all about getting crunchy pickles. It's really cool. And that's what you get when you do zucchini pickles. And here's the deal. Every jar of pickles can be a little different because you're making them on the go. So you basically look through your herb cabinet and you grab what looks good. And inside of that ebook, I share several recipes that I really love. And you can create recipes on the fly. All right. Now, you only have to try one of these preservation techniques at a time. I just threw a lot of stuff at you. I threw canning, dehydrating, freezing, and quick pickling at you, right? We've talked about 4 different techniques. When you're getting started, keep it simple and get started with one technique. Otherwise, it could be overwhelming if you try to do everything all at once, all right? So master one technique, see how you like it, move on to something new. I recommend a technique a week, and then try the next technique and see what you think of that one. And remember, you know, you really don't have to try everything all at once. You can, I just don't recommend it because what happens is when you try it all at once, what happens is that you overload yourself on it and then it's no longer fun. You don't want to go back and try it again. So you want to dole out the fun in little bits, little increments, right? All right. So what do you guys think? Could you save 40% on your grocery bill? Do you think you could use some of these opportunities to preserve a little bit of food each week? You don't have to preserve big batches all the time. Do you think you could preserve a little bit? Do you think you could dry a couple powders? Do you think you could make a couple quick pickles? Do you think you could freeze a couple things for later? Whatever's left over in the bottom of your fridge. Because guess what? We all do this. We're wired to always leave food in the fridge just in case. And so here is the thing. Do something daring. Put it all out each week on your table. Empty your fridge. And I want you to think about preserving just a little bit each week. You're simply moving your storage from your fridge to your shelves, or to your freezer, or to quick pickles, so you can enjoy it later. It's still there. That's the cool part. It's still there. But if you leave it in the bottom of your fridge, it's going to go bad and it's going to go to waste and you're going to lose it. All right. So this is all about saving that 40%. Now we've got 2 more types of food preservation to cover, but to introduce this next one, I want to talk about the next secret. So secret number 2, in just 6 weeks, your pantry could be stocked year-round with fresh, healthy food options. Think about this for a minute. In just 6 weeks, you could have a pantry stocked so that you could have meals in minutes. And no, I don't mean canning. We're not going to talk about canning here. We're not going to talk about pickling nonstop for 6 weeks. Here is a quick story for you. So I used to do catering gigs and pop-up restaurant gigs in Brooklyn, and I got to work with some amazing chefs in New York City. And once we were working on a menu for a fundraiser at the farm, and each chef was taking one of our vegetables and creating a dish around it. And I decided I wanted to create a recipe to showcase our cabbage. And this is a big event. There's lots of dishes that were going to be on the plate. I was working with these amazing chefs, and my food had to be amazing next to these chefs. So I wanted to test some new concoctions before I started creating the final recipe for the actual event. So I wanted to work with our cabbage. Now, I know this might not sound exciting to everybody, but what I wanted to do was to create a bunch of different sauerkrauts. And so I wanted to test the recipes first. So I went to the grocery store. I didn't take the food from the farm yet, because that's going to be for the fundraiser. So I went to the store and I bought a bunch of cabbage and a bunch of other vegetables and herbs, and I made 12 quarts of various sauerkraut recipes. I wanted to try different options and see how the recipes would taste when they were paired with other food that the chefs were preparing. Now, some of you might be thinking sauerkraut doesn't sound that fancy or that interesting at all. But part of the mission of the fundraiser was to raise awareness about how fermented foods improve your gut health. And some of the health stats are really staggering around the health of your gut. So 40% of diseases are linked to bacterial imbalances in the gut. It's incredible, right? So things like depression, arthritis, IBS, cancer, these are all things that are related to imbalances in our gut. And fermented foods like sauerkraut are very interesting to people who are interested in peak health, who see their food as medicine. Is your food medicine? Do you see it that way? And now more than ever, boosting your immunity is so important in a world that's gone a little bit crazy, right? Okay, so I have to say, these were not your typical sauerkrauts that I wanted to make. I wanted to make delicious sauerkrauts that were unusual. So among one of them that was my favorite was a rosemary, plum, lemongrass sauerkraut, because that's what we had available on the farm. Those were the ingredients. So I wanted to make that as the recipe. And so the fermentation process can take anywhere between 2 to 6 weeks, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the process. So after about 14 days, I knew that I had some winners among the 12 recipes that I had made. But here's the thing. Remember, I said I made these sauerkrauts from the grocery store. I didn't make them from the farm. These were just test runs. So I had to now remake all of this from cabbage that was growing on the farm. So I had at home 12 extra quarts of sauerkraut all to myself. And here's what I learned about myself. I love putting a dollop of sauerkraut on everything. And I basically went through all that sauerkraut in 13 weeks, a little less than a quart per week. So this is me putting a dollop of sauerkraut on my veggie burgers. And what I found was that about 25% of the food on my plate each meal is typically something fermented. And here I had created 13 weeks worth in just 2 hours on a Sunday. So here's sauerkraut on my breakfast plate with my refried beans, my collard greens, and my avocado. So let me break this down what this means. This means that you could create I could create all my own sauerkraut for the year in less than 8 hours. That's incredible to think about, right? How easy is that? 25% of the food on my plate, vegetables, fermented vegetables, great for my health, boosting my immunity against diseases, taken care of in just 8 hours of prep time each year. Now, you've probably spent that much time cooking in a single week, right? It's mind-boggling. So have you ever run the math on the staples that you eat? It's really powerful to do this exercise. So how many jars of pasta sauce would you need for the year? How many zucchini burgers do you need frozen for the year? How long would it take for you to stow all that away for whenever you need it? Now, I'm not sure what your staples are, but it turns out if I create large batches, I could stock my pantry with most of my staples if I spent 8 hours on Sundays for 6 weeks in a row. That's 8 hours for 6 weeks. That's 8 hours is a long time, but it's only 6 weeks. I find it much more enjoyable to spend about 2 hours every Sunday planning my meals for the week and knocking out some of those preservation goals on my plan. So I don't do 8 hours each week. I do more like 2 hours and knock out my meal planning for the week and my food preservation for the year. Because here's the deal. Have you ever wondered how restaurants can feed hundreds of people in just a half an hour, and why it takes us that same half hour to just feed ourselves or our family one single meal? Restaurants don't have endless options. They have staples that are stocked and prepped and ready to go. And they have 12 types of chefs, some that clean the potatoes, some that chop the potatoes, some that make the soup, some that plate the dishes. You're trying to do all those things at once every time you cook, and it's not very efficient. You know, they even have sous chefs and station chefs that batch all this preparation work. So I want you to think about your staples for a moment. If you're new to preserving food, start with just 3 staples. What are 3 things that would be awesome to have fresh year-round? How much do you eat each week of that staple? If you don't know, start a food journal and notice what you eat regularly and how much of it you eat. We really are creatures of habit. Even though we like diversity and we like to try new things, we really are creatures of habit when it comes to food. You're going to start to see patterns. Quantify how much you need to make and to enjoy this year round. And if you want to link this to your garden, the next step is to quantify how many plants you're going to need to grow to get the amount of vegetables that you need. So I like to make rate-based goals to make sure I'm preserving enough of my staples to help me make it through the off season. Remember, every time you prep a meal throughout the week, it's time consuming. So in this case of a rate-based goal, I'm looking at, I want 1 tablespoon of dried green powder for each day of the winter. And so I start looking at, okay, 1 bunch, 10 leaves is about 1 to 2 tablespoons dried. I'm assuming 150 days in my winter. So I need 75 to 150 bunches. And if my growing season is 25 weeks long, if I'm drying 5 bunches per week, then I have my greens for the winter. So think rate-based goals. Because like I said, every time you prep a meal throughout the week, it's time consuming. You're pulling everything out, you're washing it, you're cleaning everything. And then when you're done, you're putting everything back. So batching and automating saves you tons of time year round. Think like a restaurant owner. Think about creating 80 meals all at once. Think about, or 90 meals all at once. How much time are you going to free up when you have 90 meals planned at a time? 90 meals is like 3 months of food, right? Here's the deal. If you're in a hurry to get food on the table, you might be tempted to grab something more convenient, which, let's face it, oftentimes means less healthy or less fresh. And I get it. After a busy day, you're tired. I know I have wished for the magic dinner fairy to show up and put fresh food on my table. Wouldn't it be nice to have your kitchen stocked so that meals take just a couple minutes to throw together? Here's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about biggie sizing your meal plans, but keep it simple. Start with those 3 staples and add more each year. And if you're wondering what to do if you have multiple mouths to feed, you might be thinking 2 hours a week doesn't sound reasonable to preserve all the food for all my loved ones. Here's what I would tell you. Hungry mouths, they come with 2 hands each, right? So as long as kids are old enough to wash and cut vegetables, they can help you prepare big batches. And one of the principles of my Harvest into Meal system is that many hands make light work. It's fun for the whole family. So you make this a party and everybody enjoys it. Plus, I got to tell you the secret. Picky eaters, they're more likely to eat what they create. And this is Marcy, who said, I spent a nice day with my daughter making pickles and strawberry jam. When your kids get involved helping you to prepare this food, they're more likely to eat it. And here's the thing, they have their own flavor palette. Let them go for it. I'm going to talk about flavor palettes in a minute. Allow your kids to help create these recipes as well. They're more likely to eat it. It's okay if they have weird taste buds. They're kids. That's what they do, right? All right. So that is secret number 2. And here's one of my other students, Kate, who said she's got a counter full of colorful veggie ferments going regularly. I know what to do with the beautiful variety of herbs we grow. Our food is tasting better. It's fresher. Definitely getting a boost nutritionally. I've overcome harvest paralysis. And harvest paralysis is basically when you have too much harvest and you don't know what to do with it all. Like there's so much coming out of the garden and you can't figure out how to cook it all, preserve it all. And so she's overcome that. And I should mention another student of ours has a husband who's a pilot. And just that one tip about dehydrating greens that we talked about earlier, now that pilot takes those greens wherever he goes, and he always has healthy meals, no matter what is available in the restaurants. So that's what's possible here. So can you see how in just 6 weeks, your pantry could be stocked year-round with fresh, healthy meals? Do you see how this can work for you as well? And like I said, start with your staples, keep it simple, and gradually build up. But I'm going to show you in just a minute how to take maximum opportunity out of those staples that you do have. So secret number 3, having a harvest preservation system not only helps you save time and energy preparing food year round, but it allows you to be creative, putting meals together in unusual ways for delicious and unexpected meals in just minutes. So let me tell you about my amazing parents. I discovered so much from them. I am blessed that they saw the value of fresh food. They were amazing at putting healthy meals on the table every day of my childhood, even when we were young and on a very tight budget. So my parents are, I can't believe how blessed I was that they, at a very young age, instilled in me the idea that if we always had fresh, healthy food, then we were doing well, then we were healthy and we felt good. And I enjoyed that time outside with my parents, and I enjoyed that time cooking with my parents. So if you are here today and you're sharing this with the loved ones and your young loved ones that you have, you're my hero, because you are producing the next generation of people who are excited about health and vitality, and you're setting them up for a lifetime of good health. The reason why we're here is that my parents instilled these values in me. So if you're doing that for your kids, you are a hero. They will tell you someday that you are their hero. All right. And I'm telling you now because I love you. All right. So my parents, like I said, they were amazing putting meals on the table every day, even when the budget was really tight. And I think at one point, our weekly budget for the 4 of us, for all of our food for the week, was $25. And I think with inflation, that might be something like feeding a family of 4 on $100 a week right now. So 2 things happen when you're on that kind of tight budget. The first is that you have a very clear system where you can see exactly what the budget is and how it's being spent to make sure you're on track. That's my mom. She loves organization. She's really good at making things visible and what all the meals were, when we're going to eat them, and what we're going to do with the leftovers. And here's an image of my fridge here with all of my family. And, we have a ton of people in the house. And so we put up these Post-it notes for each other that say things like, hey, this is what's fresh this week. Eat this up before it goes bad. And so we make sure it's visible, and we're saying, this is what's available. Make sure you eat it so it doesn't get lost in the fridge. The second thing that happens when you're on a strict budget is that you get really creative. Sometimes you don't have all the ingredients that you need for a recipe, and you have to figure out a creative substitution. And that's my dad. He used to take recipes as a suggestion, but he just makes stuff up on the spot. And this was before the explosion of cable and cooking shows. This was before the internet. There was no Googling what's for dinner. We had these little recipe cards, and that was it. Anyway, one time I remember he was making a stir fry, and the recipe called for a honey mustard mixture, but we were all out of honey. And I saw him grab the grape jelly. And I was a kid, and I was like, Dad, that's so gross. You're going to mix mustard and grape jelly? Ew. And he just smiled and laughed, and he said, it's going to be awesome. You just see. Because what he knew was that honey is sweet and a little thick in texture. And guess what? So is grape jelly. And as I sat there that night, putting that first bite of stir fry in my mouth, I was a little bit timid. And he told me why he knew it would be good. And he told me the mysteries of meal, and the mysteries of all of this became a little bit clearer to me, the mysteries of meal planning and recipe making. And I started to think that my dad was kind of a magician in the kitchen. So when I created my 7-step Harvest into Meals preservation system, I combined these 2 lessons from my parents. From my mom, making things visible, so you can easily reach your goals without a lot of effort and nothing goes to waste. And number 2, finding creativity within the system so that you don't get bored eating the same thing over and over. You can become a flavor ninja just like my dad. And it's easier than you might think. So let me introduce you to my 7-step process, and you're going to see how a little bit more about this flavor ninja process. Okay, so the 7-step Harvest into Meals preservation system. So the first step is you want to set your goals. And like any goals, you want them to be smart, right? You want them to be specific so that you can see it, measurable, you can quantify it, achievable, challenging, but realistic, and whatever relevant, whatever works for you, and time bound, done by a certain date. So far we've been talking about different goals, like rate-based goals. What are the staples that you want to have on hand? How much do you need for the year? And then when are you going to actually start to think about preserving those? So setting those big staple goals. What are your goals? What do you want on your shelves so that you know you're stocked for the winter? And most important part of this is to make those goals visible, like my mom does, right? So making sure that wherever your goals are, posting them so you know, I got to take care of this goal. The second thing that you want to start to do is quantify those goals with a harvest log. What's a harvest log? So you may or may not have a garden. And so if you have a garden, I highly recommend a harvest log. And what it does is it tells you how many plants you're growing and how much you harvest from those plants and when. And if you have a garden this year for the first time, I recommend that you sit down and once a week, you write down how much you harvested. And you can make a guess too. Like if you don't remember, if you're just getting started, go back and remember the last couple of weeks. Okay, I harvested 2 bunches of kale, 3 bunches of this, whatever. Write it down and document it because it's going to be helpful to know how much you harvested. Now, if you don't have a garden, that's totally fine. You can also do this from the farmer's market. Take note of what's available at the farmer's market, which weeks of the year, so that next year it's going to be useful to remember what came into peak season and when. So David was one of my students and said how big of a difference just one of my ideas made. He implemented this harvest log idea, and it's helped him figure out when the different fruits and vegetables are all ripening throughout the year. And then he uses this information to even out his food production throughout the year. So tracking it your first year helps you know what's going to happen next year, because every year the seasons always unfold pretty much the same way. Yeah, weather's a little bit different, but every year the dates are about the same. So the third step is to create your future harvest plan. So you're quantifying this year what's available, when it's available, how much is available, so that now you can create next year a plan. You have your staples that you set goals for in your first step. Now you can create a future plan for all next year, and you can create a plan to harvest all of that from your garden if you like. So how much harvest is expected per plant? These are all numbers that you can find. How many plants do you need to grow to match those preservation goals? When are you going to harvest and how much? So this is the magic, is really linking your garden to your preservation plan. And this is one of my students. In case you're wondering, how much can you really grow and how much can you preserve? This is Jibe. She says in just 36 days, that's like a little over a month, she grew close to $600 worth of produce in her garden. Weekly, she's averaging 8 pounds of fresh greens, chard, and kale. So you can run the numbers and find out what are your staples and how much can you grow so that you can set up your harvest plan for next year, right? Now, this is where it gets fun. This is where we start talking about the food preservation system that we talked about earlier. You're going to divide your weekly harvest into your meal plan. So now this is the moment that we talked about earlier, where you open your fridge and you pull everything out of your fridge every week. All right, on a Sunday, if it makes sense to do it on a Sunday, pull everything out of your fridge. And what the first thing you're going to do is make a meal plan for the week. And so you're going to set aside some of that food that you're going to create meals for the week. And then the rest that you're not using, you're going to preserve for later. We'll talk about that in another step. So now you meal prep for the week. You spend a couple hours and you cook everything for the week. And this is where you become a flavor ninja. So one of the things that I like to do, a good weekly meal plan, is I'll batch all the basic ingredients ahead of time and then have all my staples ready to go. And then I add different flavors each day. Here's what I mean by that. An example, I will cook a huge batch of soup. Soup is an amazing thing to boost your immunity in days of pandemics, right? Boosting your immunity with some soup. I keep it really simple. Vegetable soup, very little herbs, very little flavor, just some salt and pepper. I create a big batch of soup. The first day I have some soup. The second day, I can pull that soup out and I can take a scoop of the vegetables out, and I can I've maybe also batched some rice the previous day as well for the week. Now I can fry up some fried rice, take the vegetables, add some soy sauce, add some different flavorings, some ginger, maybe some orange, and make up an amazing stir fry from all the ingredients from my soup. And do you see how this works? The flavor ninja part. And then the next day, I still have the soup, the big pot of soup. Now I could get sick of eating soup every day. So maybe I take some of the soup and I add some noodles and I add some tomatoes and I add some basil and I add some spices to make it Italian. And I start to make like a minestrone or like a pasta sauce almost. And I could even add a little bit of coconut milk to make it creamy, like a creamy pasta sauce. And then the day after that, I could go back to the soup pot again, which is plain. I could scoop out a portion and I could add some flavors like turmeric and ginger and cardamom and cinnamon and curry and add some lentils and make it into an Indian curry dish. So in one day of creating that soup, I can then create meals for the week. I just change the flavor. So this is how a good weekly meal plan happens, is you create staples and then make them plain. And then over the course of the meals, just twist those flavors like my dad taught me how to do. Okay, so now the next step of that process is to preserve according to your goals. So you pulled everything out of the fridge, you took and you created your meal plan for the week, and now you're going to take whatever's left over, plus you're going to look at whatever your preservation goals are for the year, and you're going to preserve a little bit of food that week. So you're going to can, you're going to freeze, you're going to dehydrate, you're going to quick pickle, you're going to ferment, you're going to cure, you're going to do whatever preservation technique that you need to do so that you have a little bit of food that you're going to stock for later. So you're always stocking your shelves a little bit each week. This is how banking works, y'all. This is how banks make money. They always, you save a little bit, save a little bit, save a little bit, save a little bit, it accrues interest over time and it's stocked away for a rainy day, right? So you're stocking food away for a rainy day. And we didn't talk about curing and storing today. This is what you do with things like winter squash, onions, garlic, sweet potatoes, and even beets and carrots. These are things that all you need to do once you harvest them is cure them in order to store them. And if you buy them at the farmer's market, they've probably already been cured for you. All right, so the final step of your Harvest into Meals system is to create your preservation log. This goes back to my mom making things visible. So once you stock your shelves, how do you know what's there and how do you know what you've used? So you need a system that's visible. So, and you want to make sure you write on everything what you preserved and when, because you want to know when it's going to no longer be good. So every food preservation technique has a different expiration date. So what I like to do is not just write when it was made, but when I think it might expire so that I know when I need to eat it by. This is how you know how much you have on hand and what you already ate. One of the ways that I do this is I have a sheet where I create little boxes, and let's say I want to eat these foods by a certain date. Notice on the left, eat them by a certain date. What is the food? And then I basically outline a box and I say, okay, I created 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 quarts of tomatoes. And then I check them off as I eat them so that I now know, okay, I have 5 quarts left of those 8. And this way it's visible. So now if I start to get close to the end, I know I need to make more. All right. So make things visible in your food preservation log. All right. So that is my 7-step Harvest into Meals preservation system. So first I want to ask you this question. If you followed what I showed you in secret number 1, and you simply preserved everything left in the bottom of your fridge each week and saved 40% on the groceries this year, remember, no little pepper left behind, and you followed what I showed you in secret number 2, so you batched your staples in just a couple weeks from the freshest produce of the year so that you had a fresh supply year round. It's nutrient rich, it tastes better than store-bought, and it's food that tastes like summer, even when it's cold outside. And then you applied secret number 3, so that those staple foods, you not only had meals, but you had creative and exciting meals that you could become a flavor ninja of your own. Isn't this exciting? If you put these ideas to work for you, what might be possible in your life? Now, for many of you, you're feeling a little overwhelmed because we covered a lot really fast. And it's impossible for me to cover everything in 60 minutes. So I created a special offer for those of you who are ready to move forward and implement what we've been talking about. So imagine having a plan to stock your shelves with fresh food so you can enjoy healthy meals for months, no matter what's going on in the world. Imagine linking that plan to what's available at the farmer's market or in your garden. And imagine walking through that process step by step. This is a class you can take with the whole family. This is a time when kids are at home and you could be setting them up for a lifetime of healthy habits. So inside of my Preserve the Harvest course, I walk you through all the preservation techniques that we discussed here today, step by step: curing, storing, dehydrating, drying, freezing, fermenting, quick pickling, and canning. And, I mentioned Becky earlier that now she has the confidence to do all of this on her own. And so in the first week, and let me just post the link here. Let me post the link for anybody who is interested. I'm going to post that on the page. And I'm going to continue talking about this. So in the first week, I walk you through, this is about safety, about food handling, and also about harvesting. People don't realize how much more they could be harvesting if they knew how to harvest correctly. So I walk you through the basic harvest techniques so you know that you're doing it right, and you know that you're doing it in a way that ensures that your produce is going to last. That's the other thing about harvesting correctly. And you're going to learn how to cure things like squash, garlic, onion, carrots, and beets for maximum flavor as well. All right, and then the second week, we go into drying, dehydrating, and freezing. And I mentioned earlier that one of our students, Laura, had a pilot husband who was taking these powders, these green powders, up with him now on his flights because he doesn't have access to food. And what's interesting about what she said about the course is that she's impressed with the course. It made her realize how much she was underutilizing her garden. And so she realized that there was stuff that she was not thinking about. And so in the second week, we're going to freeze and dry. You're going to see fast ways to save food for later. I'm going to show you how to make some of my favorite snack foods, like those kale chips, eggplant bacon. For some of you that, when you have a hankering for something crispy and but all you have is vegetables, you can make eggplant bacon. How cool is that? And plus you can dry your tea for cold and flu season, and you can dry teas that aren't available on the store shelves. This is going to help you avoid some of those common colds that people have. And there's so many herbs in your garden that you could be making beautiful teas with, and you can avoid the pitfalls of drying and dehydrating. There's certain ways to do it where you get the maximum nutrition from your drying and dehydrating. Okay, so speaking of which, let's talk about your gut health again. So remember fermenting, keeping all those chronic diseases at bay with lots of fermented fun. So it's more than just sauerkraut. We've got fermented jams, kimchi, and more. Gut health is related to chronic food diseases or chronic food related diseases, which we talked about. So fermenting really helps you feel great. I know that when I eat fermented foods every day, I just feel lighter and healthier. And here's one of our students, Kate, counterful of colorful fermentations going regularly. So there's a constant rotation of fruits and veggies going in and out, and a beautiful variety of herbs. It's tasting better, it's fresher, getting that boost nutritionally. So this could be you. And of course, you'll see how to safely can the harvest so your loved ones can enjoy those healthy meals worry-free. I'm going to share tricks for batching so it doesn't seem like you're standing over a hot stove for days. Plus creative ways to use those big batches so that you don't have to eat the same thing all the time. So we talked a little bit about becoming a flavor ninja, and I go into deep dive in the course in how to create variations on these recipes. And that's what's inside of Module 5 is the full preservation and storage system. I'm going to walk you through that harvest into meals preservation system step by step. We're going to create a roadmap that helps you link your growing or your farmer's market to your preservation goals and delivers that fresh supply of food to your plate year-round with nutrient-rich meals and minutes. And the system helps simplify the whole food preservation process because you're focused on your goals. And for beginners, I can help you preserve those first 3 staples, get them into storage, and find creative ways to put them into use. If you've never gardened, you might decide to grow a couple of basics. So for people with a bit of experience who feel a little overwhelmed by the whole food preservation process, I can help you create a whole new system where all the pieces work together to serve your goals. Because I really think systematically. So this is a systematic approach that produces creative answers to all those persistent problems of growing the food, preserving the food, and putting meals on the table. And for those of you with lots of mouths to feed, keep in mind that I have created quite a few events in my time. I ran a couple pop-up restaurants in Brooklyn. So if you're having trouble thinking big and getting lots done in the kitchen effectively, you're going to see tricks that are going to help you get the cooking done. And so this is the 101 recipe book that goes along with the course. And people love these recipes. I have so many people who they tell me that I put together flavors in new and unusual ways. People who have 25 years experience tell me that I put together flavors that they never would have thought to put together. All right, so that is what is included in the course. And I actually want you to get in the kitchen and just love this stuff. So this class includes the recipe book, and it's all available. This is, over 5 hours of preserving lessons. This is something that, if you were to spend a couple weeks with a chef doing all of this, imagine how much money you would spend with that chef, right? So all of these weeks of preservation lessons, plus those recipe books, this really is a value of over $500. And typically, we offer it at a regular price on our website for $297, but today it's available for $197. And just to put that in perspective about what that would be worth to you. This is about spending a couple of weeks together with your family. This is about making memories. When I filmed this class, in just 5 weeks' time, I had my kitchen stocked for months. I barely went to the grocery store for several months after I filmed this course. And so this is an opportunity for you to enjoy some time with your family, to stock your kitchen for the winter, to make a ton of meals, to get your family excited about fresh food as well. And because it's stocked, it's convenient. So you can whip up those healthy meals in minutes, even after a long day at work. And it tastes better, right? Healthy meals always taste better. Homegrown always tastes better. Homemade always tastes better because you have special ingredients that you used, and there's no weird preservatives like the food that's on the shelves at the grocery store. That's what I would love for you, all of this homemade love. And it's my passion to help you achieve that. And I've helped people who've never done any of this. I've walked them through step by step until they have the confidence on their own. And guess what? When all this food stuff is taken care of and you have fresh, healthy meals on your table with less effort than you thought, imagine what else is possible in your life. Imagine what you could do with that time that you free up. What other hobbies do you want to take up? And here's why you want to register today. So you're also going to receive a couple of super cool bonuses when you register now. So the first is our Harvest Club bonus. And this is where you get support to make more progress faster. So this is our community of experts where you can get the help that you're looking for. And this is a special community. These are people who all have the same goals that you do. And so you can find camaraderie among the people that are doing exactly what you're doing. And you can get support for as you're moving through this process. And the second bonus is, this is awesome. We also include my crop planting class, because if you're already gardening, this is how you maximize every square inch of your garden space. You plan your rotations and your successions, and then you link all of that to your food preservation goals. So if you haven't started gardening yet, this course gets you started thinking about this in the right right framework, because now you're linking it to exactly what you want to eat. So this kicks you off really well if you're a beginner. And if you're experienced, this really helps you optimize and simplify your garden. And so people join this class for $197, and you're receiving this here as a bonus today. So this is ridiculously cool. That together, this is linking everything you need for a green lifestyle, right? So that's why I really like linking these two courses together. I'd really love to help you see the success that you want, to enjoy the kind of summer deliciousness all year round, and to make it happen easily. If that's not enough, everyone always asks me about plant-based cheese. So the third bonus is that e-guide. It's awesome. How to make cheese, creams, and yogurt. It's all plant-based, fermenting seeds, nuts, and tofu to create those creamy delights for your dinner plate. You are going to love this. So imagine putting a little pesto almond cheese on top of your next plate of food. Because here's the deal. When you mix your own cheeses, you get to create fresh herb and spice blends into those cheeses. And you can create these really cool flavors for your dishes, transforming your basic staple foods into something that tastes incredible. This is how restaurants put together bowls these days. Have you noticed? Every restaurant puts together these bowls of all these different ingredients. This could be you. You could create bowls all the time. Now, my housemates got together one night for the cheese making party. I taught them how to make all these cheeses, and we made things from walnuts, sunflower seeds, almonds, macadamia nuts, and we also made harder rind cheese from tofu. So in just a couple of hours, we had huge 5 big batches that lasted a couple weeks, and all uniquely flavored from things like cacao and cinnamon. One of them was like a soft pepper jack cheese, and then we also do cashew yogurt as well. So that's also included in the course. Oh, I need to take my picture off the screen because I'm covering up the price, aren't I? So basically, you get all of the Preserve the Harvest class along with the crop planting class, and you get Harvest Club bonus. You get the cheese and yogurt bonus. And when you're ready to register for class, there's a button on your screen. It says register now. Go ahead, click that button. You'll be taken to our secure order form where you can sign up. And it is an online course. Everything's online these days. We've been teaching this course online for years now. I basically have a camera showing me making all of the different things so you can see how to safely make them at home as well. You have lifetime access to the materials, so you can come back and watch again and again. And what I recommend is doing one technique per week. And I did the entire course, I filmed in 5 weeks. I did it over 5 weeks. And like I said, I was stocked for months. So it's all online. So it's convenient and easy. You can do this with your family. And time is of the essence here. You're going to want to register now and take advantage of these bonuses. This is a special limited time offer, and you can get started right away. The lessons are already there waiting for you. And you might be thinking, I can figure all this out on my own because Google is awesome. YouTube is awesome, right? Well, here's the thing. If you've been trying to figure this out on your own, how much time have you spent, finding all the little bits and pieces? Instead, save all that time and effort. I've curated it all. I show it all to you. Everything you need is in this course. I've already done all the work for you. So join the Preserve the Harvest, and this is your opportunity to shortcut all of that effort looking for all of the right information. It's all in one place for you. That's what's available here for you. And by the way, people ask me all the time, why do you have all of the food preservation techniques in this course? Like why all of them? Why not just a fermenting course or just a canning course? The reason why I have them all in one course is that what you saw from one of our students, Laura, she mentioned that the course was amazing. And she also told us that she came to the course thinking that she was going to ferment or can or whatever. And then all of a sudden she realized that she was underutilizing her garden, and she started creating greens, powdered greens, dehydrated greens that she sent with her husband, the pilot, so that he could have fresh, healthy meal options. And so the reason why we put everything together is that you're going to get hooked, and you're going to find ways to preserve things that you never realized. And once you start, you're going to see how all the pieces fit together, and why you might change your mind later and want to learn a whole nother type of food preservation. So wouldn't it be nice to have it all in one place so that you could access it whenever you want? And here's what I want you to know about me. I'm nobody special. I have a busy schedule just like you. I have to put food on my table, 3 meals a day, just like you. And sometimes I really struggle to remember to cook. And that's why I love my Harvest into Meals food preservation system, because it makes it so that preserving the harvest is just one of my routines. And I know what I need to do each week to keep bringing that fresh food onto the table. All right. So I did forget to mention, all this is risk-free. It comes with a 30-day guarantee. You can view all the course materials, ask us a ton of questions, and still ask for your money back if it's not what you're looking for. All right. So it's totally risk-free. Go ahead and click on the Register Now button, and you can get started. And here's the deal. Habits are really hard to break. You've been trying to put food on the table for a long time, probably. And you probably have habits about going to the grocery store at the last minute or going and grabbing prepared foods. Habits are hard to break. I have already figured out how to integrate all of this into my life. But this isn't about me, it's about you. And if you leave now, you might think you learned a lot of really cool stuff. But my guess is that by tomorrow morning, you're going to have slipped back into your normal routine. So you're going to do just what you've always done, right? So, but when you register for class, I'm not going to let you go back to your old habits. I'm going to make sure you're successful by breaking your habits down, rebuilding them, that weekly cycle. So if you want real lasting change, you need repeated exposure to a Harvest into Meals system and exposure to people who are also doing this with you, so you can build momentum to make this happen. And that's what you get when you investigate. It's always a lot more fun to do this together. So click the Register Now button, and I look forward to seeing your kitchen stocked with fresh food.